hot.
Welcome. You're listening to 360 Info. I'm your host, Antonio. To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. Welcome. The sun is shining today. We got a good show for you today. Glad you all are here. Again, I'd like to thank you all for participating in our June event. You know, we got to keep it going, and we got to reach out to the community, get more people involved, and also get these politicians, councilmen, and corporations involved as well, so we can maintain control of our Juneteenth celebration. In the remote studio, we got Brother Vince. What's going on?
75 degrees outside. It's sunny. It's going to be like that all day, and then tomorrow we're going to get a few extra degrees and feeling like summer around here, man. Cleveland is a great place to be sometimes during the year, and this just happens to be one of them. Also, just want to let everybody know that next Saturday at Larchmere Arts, we are going to welcome the poet Vision. Her name is Vision. She's also known as Naila Muhammad. She's going to come and spice up the stage with some musical accompaniment. The jazz poets will be on hand to provide a background for her words and also to present some music to the community. So join us 7 o'clock next Saturday, 12726 Larchmere Boulevard. And you can send your money to $THASOULPOET. That's $the Soul Poet, THASOULPOET. And you can make your reservations for that. We're going to have some light refreshments. So it's just $10, y'all. Come on down and get your fill and continue the celebration that we initiated last month, thanks to our brother and broadcast partner, Antonio. So come join us. It's going to be a great time. And also, before I let this go, if you're interested in some passive income, I mean, you don't really have to do a whole lot. And every Friday you get paid. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. All you got to do is text cash flow to 216-780-2470. That's 216-780-2470. And you can start earning right away. Start today and get paid next Friday. It's that simple. All right. We have a great show lined up for you today. On the line is Stephanie Stevens McCain. She is a licensed mental health therapist, spiritual counselor, and life coach in her private practice. She serves individuals, couples, families, and groups. Her area of concentration is trauma and abuse recovery, relationship attachment therapy, and crisis management. Her private practice location is Lamplight Counseling Services. That's at 6133 Rockside Rd in Independence, Ohio. You can reach her by calling 216-455-5571. Again, that's 216-455-5571. And her motto is enjoying the journey in spite of the circumstance. We've had her on the show before. And I think this issue of mental health is really important. So we have invited her back, and we would like to have her on as a frequent guest right here on 360 Info Network. Welcome to our radio program, Stephanie Stevens McCain. Okay, we're going to pot Stephanie up. Hopefully we will be able to hear her.
All right. Are you there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Vince.
That's okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome. I'm excited and honored to be here. I'm excited.
Okay.
And thank you again.
All right. So you reached out and you told me that you were interested in talking about something called CPTSD. Now, I've heard of PTSD. I hadn't heard of CPTSD until I looked it up after having the conversation with you. So let's talk about exactly what that. Of course. You know, you got to do your homework when you're doing shows like this. So I looked it up, but I want the listening audience to get the benefit of your explanation of it. So tell us what CPTSD is.
All right. So let me just tell the contrast. The PTSD it can be one devastating traumatic event that takes place. And so then a person is affected by the traumatic event by different criteria, meaning the criteria for PTSD are the same. sleepless nights, restlessness, flashbacks, and things like that. But it's one event that we kind of focus on, even if it's a military event, because most people think PTSD, they think military. Complex trauma or complex post-traumatic stress disorder is for repeated offense, such as domestic violence, repeated sexual abuse, in neglect, childhood neglect. A lot of times the CPTSD can come from a childhood experience, repeated trauma. So the difference is that complex is treated and complex trauma is subjective. So it's the client who kind of dictates how complex it is or how severe that trauma is by their behaviors and different things of that nature. So those are the difference.
Okay.
Between the two.
You talked about childhood trauma, and I remember a few years back running across something on YouTube, and it was a woman who was talking about acute childhood experiences and the impact that has on the lives of people down the road and, you know, as they are growing, as they're evolving into the person that they become. And so I'm seeing some similarities between the two. And it sounds like we're kind of talking about the same thing, the fact that multiple things have happened to you or happened to a person that have caused some type of trauma in their lives. And then it expresses later on or, you know, as they are evolving.
Yes, it is. It is happening later on. And that's childhood complex trauma. But it can still be from domestic violence. You can have an adult situation that a person is being repeatedly in a emotional or physical, I'm going to clarify that, emotional or physical abusive connection or power and control dynamics that would also create a complex trauma.
Okay. And how do those things...
the repetitiveness of that behavior.
Okay. How do these things affect people in their adult lives? How are they manifest in their behaviors? Gosh.
So it's manifest by irritability, unreasonable emotional and negative emotional reactivity, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle responses, problems with concentration. So you can have, let's just take kiddos, you can have a child in, fourth, sometimes kindergarten, but I'm going to say second or third grade, first and second and third grade, and the teachers are like they have attention deficit disorder. But attention deficit disorder, in my humble opinion, and I think studies are showing it as well, has to be ruled out. The trauma aspect of a child's journey has to be ruled out before you just label attention deficit, because a lot of times that attention deficit, there has been a trauma experience that may have gone unaddressed, not acknowledged. Some people don't even acknowledge certain things as trauma because, like I said, complex trauma is subjective. So if you don't take the time to get an understanding of the little human and how they perceive possibly a spanking or a yelling or two parents shouting at each other, then you'll end up, having a kid that once the society says that they should take medicine because they have attention deficit when they actually have probably been traumatized somewhere on their journey.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was just thinking that, so many times we diagnose it as one thing and then we look at the remedy as being something pharmaceutical when in actuality this person is dealing with a trauma that they can receive therapy for and get through, but instead of getting a therapy, they get a pill. And then you suffer from the side effects that come from that pill and the misdiagnosis and the implications of that. So it can open up a whole can of worms that affects a person for the rest of their lives just because they didn't address it correctly in the first place.
Yes, and I'll give you one more devastating is that when we don't address it, we pop a pill and then we send little Johnny or Susie back into the same trauma-filled environment.
Yeah, that's
so we're taking medicine to be able to sit in an analytical school setting so that we don't, get the calls home to mom and dad, but it's not changing what the behaviors in the family system, what are they doing? And we, as you know, a lot of this work that we've been doing on epigenetics and inherited family trauma if the child is having trauma, the parents have trauma, and all of that goes unchecked. Nobody goes to get help. We don't do family therapy. And so we just pop a pill. Probably mom and dad are on pills too, for anxiety or depression, who knows? And nothing ever gets resolved that way.
Yeah, we're looking at a multi-generational phenomenon that, there are solutions. I think we run away from them because of the stigma that's involved in mental health treatment and services and so forth. But it's definitely something that is vital that we address, and that's why we're doing this show on it right now. You're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE with your hosts, Hamtonio, yours truly, Vince Robinson, and Stephanie Stevens McCain, a licensed mental health therapist, spiritual counselor, and life coach. And you can reach her by dialing 216-455-5571, 216-455-5571. We'll be back with more 360 Info Network right after this message from the African American Museum. Welcome back to 360 Info Network with your hosts, Hamtonio, yours truly, Vince Robinson, and our guest, Stephanie Stevens McCain. We have jumped into this conversation about mental health, specifically treatment for mental health issues. And the issue that we're talking about today is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Before we took this break, we were just talking about the ways that it manifests in the behavior of adults who have not received any type of treatment for it. So let's talk about how you go about treating complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
So understand that it definitely requires therapy, and everybody has a different level of effectiveness. So there are different systems like EMDR, which is really popular here in Northeast Ohio, and that is an arrhythmic eye movement modality that requires you to, it helps you to desensitize your body. There is a process called brain spotting. I'm currently doing a certification in EMDR. I have heard of brain spotting, but have not utilized it in my practice. One of the things that I also use in my practice is experiential therapy, which means that we do a lot of posing, plays, painting, a lot of imagination work. And then there's CBT, which everyone is familiar with, and that's your basic talk therapy. And then there's dialectical behavior therapy, where we talk about how do we train the brain to be responsive in a way that we take ownership of that, as opposed to the triggers being in control, our emotions being dysregulated. One of the things about complex PTSD is that it alters the brain, how it develops. So if you could have like a whole heart and it's all shaded in red, when you have complex trauma, it's little pieces on that red heart. If you can see a heart, the brain is shaped as a heart covered in red. If you can then imagine there being puzzle pieces that are missing from that red heart, those are parts of the brain that don't get developed or nurtured. And so it causes kind of like a misfire in the brain. So there's this deep fear of trusting people. There's this terminal sense of aloneness. I stated emotional dysregulation, emotional flashbacks of the events, hypervigilance about people, not just things, about people. Because remember, with the complex trauma, there are events that have taken place that cause this complex trauma. It's not just like the TV version of, airplanes flying over your head, so now I'm triggered. There is like if a child has been yelled at, and I'm going to always go back to the babies because all of this starts with the little people, and then we just grow up and, become bigger in this. But like parents being yelled at, slamming of doors, if you were spanked or beaten. So all those things have to be addressed when you're doing services for a person with complex PTSD. So we do a lot of body work. I I am a strong advocate for yoga. I use yoga poses here in sessions. Certain yoga poses help. If you know anything about hip exercises in yoga, those help to flush out trauma. That's your trauma area. Our trauma kind of sits there in our buttocks and our waist and our pelvic area, the sacral area. How about that? Of the body. And so we're dealing with the body. Let me make sure I got everything. The body, the eye movement, art. Art is exceptionally an amazing way to help to work through trauma.
Yeah, you've uncovered and unpacked so many different things, and my mind is just racing through the different possibilities in terms of what ways that we can bring this message home. But one thing that's really resonating with me right now is just the whole idea of the first of 7 Hermetic principles, and that is that the universe is mental. If your universe is mental, that means that, everything that you perceive, everything that crosses your mind is a product of your thinking. And I was just thinking about all the ways that, to use your term, triggered, that we could possibly be triggered. So I was thinking about a play that I saw at Playwrights Local that was written by Peter Lawson Jones called The Phoenix Society. He was commissioned to write it for the Life Exchange Center. And in the play, the main character is an Afghanistan war veteran. And he was also a recovering drug addict, and he had some other issues. So there's complex PTSD right there. He's sitting on the couch on one of the best days of his life. He's gotten the news that he's gotten a promotion at work. He's really making inroads with his relationship with his daughter and his mother. His wife tragically dies in a car accident. So he's got all that to deal with.
Oh, wow.
He's sitting on the couch and he sees a news report, and it's war footage, and the bombs and all that other kind of stuff triggers him. And then he, because he was triggered, he calls the drug dealer. And, what comes next. But, the beauty in the story that Peter wrote was that this person calls his sponsor and has a conversation with him, and he talks him off the ledge, and, life goes on happily ever after, thankfully, because, the narrative is so important.
Oh,
but, I just look at that and I see how perilous it is for people to have to navigate a life that is full of triggers, things that set them off and cause them to go into those deep, dark places. And then you mentioned the healing power of art. And this is something that I am so passionate about because, we underutilize those things. So to hear you talk about having a therapy session and then somebody gets to practice art or engage in art, which you and I know causes you to focus and center and connect with the creative divine energy that exists in this universe. So there's just so much there. One thing I wanted to get to, because you mentioned the little people and, how much things have changed. I'm reflecting on my own life. And I know that I was at the other end of a belt a few times, not that many times,
yes.
But being on the other end of the belt. And, at that time, we thought that was the right thing to do.
Yes.
And now it seems that there's some pushback on this idea of spare the rod, spoil the child. And there may be other ways to get through young people or get through to young people about things that they shouldn't do and things that they should do. Can you talk about the importance of having the right type of relationship with a child and the impact that could have on their formation, their evolution, and preventing them from experiencing those childhood traumas?
I would love to. So this is a really big passion for me. Yes. So one of the things that I discovered, because I too was raised with the belt and some other more severe experiences for discipline, I'll go back and say that as a culture, we come from slavery. So then to bring that behavior into your home when we don't have to anymore is something that we should reevaluate as often as possible, because even it doesn't make natural born sense to do that when it was done to us to keep us in control and in line. But what it does to the brain, and this is where grace comes in for our ancestors, is because this has been done to their brains, right? And then we reproduce and we carry this generational, experience from one fetus to the next fetus to the next fetus to the next fetus. So the importance of 0 to 3, first of all, there is no cognitive ability. A child, a being, a human does not have cognitive awareness. It starts to develop it a little after 24 months. Your child will become more and more cognitively aware. That's the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So from 0 until 3, everything is emotive. All feelings, we just feel everything, and then we label feelings. So when we're hungry, we scream out, and then our caretaker comes and they give us nourishment. When we are at night and we feel fretful, our caretakers come and they give us protection. As we're crawling around on the ground or attempting to put something in our mouths, our caretakers come and they give us guidance, and we only know what that feels like. We don't have a mind to say what it is. We just know the feeling. And so the same is true when that is void, when we don't have that experience. Now we know what that feels like, and that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, and that's where the trauma starts to take place. That's the emotional neglect, when a parent or a caregiver is not available to the child. So then you couple that with you're not emotionally available, you're not emotionally in tune, and now you're screaming and you're hitting me, which registers as pain. And people, Vince, do spank kids between 0 and 36 months. I cannot fathom it, but it happens. And and I want the world to understand that you're doing this for nothing, because the prefrontal cortex, the brain that gives logic and common sense and allows a person to do the consequence of, you do this, you get that, that's in development between 0 and 3. It is not there. And so you get to facilitate that development as a parent or a caregiver. And so if we could be ever so careful between that time, but let's just say we missed the boat and now we're here. Going back now, it is just essential to slow down and then teach our little people to express how they are feeling. They need words. And I do this work all day long, and it is difficult for adults to give words to their feelings. Most adults struggle with labeling their feelings, let alone just communicating them. They can act out the feeling of anger. They can act out the feeling of frustration, and most people just pout, or they do stonewalling, like push love away. I'll take love from you. But I don't know what it is that I'm feeling. I just know that I don't want to give away love, so I would withhold that from you, what I perceive as love. But that's no real awareness of the emotive, of an emotive feeling. Most people don't communicate that. And so if parents can start to get in touch with their own emotive feelings and then ask, how do you feel about that? Or if you hear a child, let's just say crying, you can say, hey, it sounds like you're really upset. Hey, it sounds like you might be frustrated if you think your child knows that language, but I can tell that you're really upset. Why are you upset? What has happened? And it gives the brain an opportunity to slow down, and it forces the person to go within to their highest self and giving you an answer. But a lot of times our narrative goes like this. What you crying for? Why are you crying? You want me to give you something to cry about?
Right. So in that, not only do you have the threat of physical violence, but you also have the mental abuse that happens somebody was having a conversation with me the other day, and they were talking about how this young lady was just cursing her children out, just all kinds of profanity coming out of, and the mental abuse can be just as injurious as a physical abuse.
Yes.
And the other thing that you said that just resonates so deeply with me is the importance for that child to be heard. When we have that conversation with that child and we're just talking at them and we're not talking to them, and we just completely negate what's on their mind. So as you just described it, giving them an opportunity to express what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and slowing things down, it allows them to breathe. And being in touch with our breath is so important. It's one of the ways that we can control our reactions. Something happens and you just take those 10 deep breaths, and then immediately you feel a certain sense of relief just because you've been able to do that. So I want you to talk about the whole mental abuse as well as the physical abuse and the impact that it has on the formation and evolution of children.
Yeah. So the mental portion of it is most times is toxic shame. So a shame-based nature. So if you can imagine what it means to feel shame, it means there's a lot of hiding. So the mental abuse, let's just say if a parent is always indicating that you are worthless, you can't get anything done, you're not doing it fast enough. Of course, there is the mental abuse that comes with sexual assault. Let me think of some other ways. It's the way we talk to children that creates the mental damage. Leaving a child unattended. Let's just start from 0 to 2. If a child is hungry and we've been programmed that if we pick them up, we can spoil them. And I just want to send out a clarion call that you cannot love too much. You just can't. That is the most ridiculous thing. You're spoiling your child. You're loving your child too much. That is just like, it's not possible, at least in the first 36 months of a child's life, to spoil a child. If a child needs attention, then give them the attention, because you don't know this human that has been placed here on this planet. And our jobs as parents is to have the responsibility to learn who showed up. But instead, we spend our time trying to create mini me's who haven't done their work.
And live vicariously through them.
That's true too. Yeah. Or we just, these are the rules. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that, as opposed to saying, this is my little Johnny, and I know that these are the boundaries that are set, and this person is not compliant, which, if you're looking for compliance before 36 months, you need to see your therapist too, because that's anxiety. But they're not complying. So the question shouldn't be double down on the trauma response. Don't double down on the hurt. Stop, and then, hey, take a look at little Johnny and say, I wonder what's going on with this human that they are not willing to comply. That should be like the ultimate question for teachers, for parents, any caregivers. Like, why is this happening? Let me find out. What does this human need from me right now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say we want to bring Brother Hamtonio into the conversation. Brother Hamtonio, as you listen to what we're discussing, did you have any thoughts, ideas, or questions that you wanted to pose for Ms. Stevens McCain?
Yeah, a couple things rang out, and a couple questions. With me always, I listen to things and see how it could benefit, or what kind of information could help us as a people in the way we behave. And I've been reading a lot of psychological things and listening to a lot of psychological things that kind of, bring some points of interest, to us. And so it's like a two-part statement, a question, or whatever. When we dealing, with the newfound, maybe development of technology of epigenealogy right at this particular point. First prone of this question would be, with that new discovery and finding out that we carry on memories, we're part. I'm going from an Afrocentric and African-based nature, where spirituality, where I'm going right now. So if some of our scholars and people are saying that we carry on these particular things and we are part of our ancestral line and develop those things from generation to generation, so I was first thinking about the trauma of slavery and how that still affects us today from things that we do, because in my field of study as well, I kind of because people try to avoid history and things of that nature, and this, we as a society trying to wipe out the whole history piece. It's almost like a rape victim trying to block out the trauma, and how does that affect us going forward and not looking at the truth. So that was the first prone of how it's affected us. Then dealing with kids and how they say coming to this existence, on how we pick up things as a baby and as a spirit and a soul that was that some believe that was reincarnated back into this system here, but with the absence of culture, even with some, but what I'm saying is that I think, now this is me talking, and and I don't have a license for anything, but I'm saying where we are right now as a people, of understanding how life is or how we raise our kids. I think as far as the African American experience is concerned, we lost a little of who we are, and now we are gaining a lot of cultural from somewhere else, from a Eurocentric point of view. And sometimes we can get stuck in that. So my question is, the way we looking at things, and with the absence of culture and taking on a new way of looking at things and looking at life, looking at language, because language dictates how you see things and your worldview to things. So I'm in wrapping this up, I'm trying to say that with this experience that we are having now, and the lack of culture, and with your culture, it gives you so many things and support mechanisms from the community around you. How would that affect you as well in going forward with this lack of culture now, and we taking on a Eurocentric point of view of things? It seems like that would all play into things as well, because kids pick up things all the way up, and they know a little bit more than what we think we know by watching and seeing. So if you don't have that culture and that community support, what road that would take you down as well?
Okay. I think I hear two things. I hear you asking, do we have a culture, and how do we like change the culture that we? Because
I'm saying we have a culture.
Yeah,
we have a culture. We have a culture, and it's a reactionary culture that we have developed on, because we lost our original way of how we deal with family, our worldview, and things of that nature.
It's reactional because we've been abused. That's trauma. Yes. Trauma is reaction.
Right. Exactly. And so with that reactionary culture, and now trying to, the emotions of human beings is trying to get along and things of that nature. Now we have been assimilated into a culture that I believe is not in our best interest and is not working for us. So now how is that, where's that taking us to and leading us to, with the lack of,
Right. So what I know for sure is that to become regulated, because I love your language about being a reactional society or a reactional culture of people. So becoming regulated, mindfulness and meditation and becoming centered and grounded And that takes work when you're reactional, because sitting still is not something that can be done, like to go within. You have to be trained to do that. I mean, you don't have to be professionally trained. You don't have to come to see a licensed therapist, but that's what I do. But if you can sit in a space or join with someone to be still and then allow yourself to evaluate what comes to you while you're being still, we have to become regulated as a people. We have to become very regulated, almost Zen-like, because the power comes to us when we can be still and go within. Then our culture, whatever that is, will begin to reveal itself. My culture for me will begin to reveal itself for myself. And then, you just impact your family. I'm a systemic therapist. So then I impact the people that I reach, and then you impact the people that you reach with your calm and your peace and your awareness. What I have found in my sitting still is that I began to tap into something, and my clients as well began to tap into something that is beyond this 3D experience. And that's where all of this epigenetics and people wanting to know more about it, because the more you sit with yourself, the more you realize that there is more of you to discover that has nothing to do with this, what we see here. And that's where the healing work comes in. It's almost like allowing your little person to remember where they come from again at 40, 50 years old.
Yeah. I want to jump in and just talk about culture for a moment before we go to our next break, because I think there is both good and bad in culture. I think there's a lot that we can pull from our culture as we've experienced it over the years. Just like that whole idea of respect, respect for elders. And we have a generational divide on that right now, because there are a lot of young people who don't respect their elders, and they have some legitimate reasons for not doing so. So it's not to say that young folks, they're wrong because they don't have that respect. But if you practice respect for your elders as a part of your culture, then there is a built-in way that we can all get along, just because we recognize that someone deserves respect. On the other hand, it is important for older folks, the elders in our community, to respect young folk, because then we're not perpetuating those traumas that, older folk didn't learn their lessons on. Some folks, they still got the belt. They still got the switch, and they still have the mentality that that's the way that you deal with someone that's misbehaving. So, yes, culture is extremely important, but it's and this is just coming from me, I think it's also important for our culture to evolve, to adapt to the changes that exist in society and exist in our world. So just, I'm one of the biggest advocates and proponents of culture. I think we have to also put that into perspective, because we also have a culture that sometimes in some situations, and I'm not saying all, but in some situations it reeks of patriarchy. And my brother Antonio knows as well as I do, and many of those who are in the listening audience, the importance of the feminine divine, the feminine aspect of our culture, the matrilineal aspect of our heritage, our epigenetic heritage as well. We have to take all of that into consideration. And we also have to be authentic in terms of the roles that each aspect has in our lives, the feminine divine, the masculine divine. I had a conversation with someone last night, and I posed the question, what if God was female? Because when we talk about God, we always say he, and that negates that other aspect that is equally as important as the masculine that's represented in our perception of what we look at as God, the creator, whatever term we use for it. Great conversation this morning, and we're learning a lot. I know I am. You are listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE with Antonio Vince Robinson and our guest, licensed mental health therapist Stephanie Stevens McCain. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to 360 Info Network with your hosts, Hamtonio, Vince Robinson, and our guest, Stephanie Stevens McCain. And I'm telling you, sister, you're dropping it on us today. You know, you're talking about things that we can do to address the traumas that we've experienced, not only as children, but also as adults. And you have underscored the importance of seeking out treatment. So talk about what it's like for someone. You know, what do you think is the tipping point that finally registers in somebody's brain and says, I think I need to seek out some help, and talk about how much it takes for someone to reach that conclusion in their life and to move forward?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I will. So let me tell you what I did real quick, though, while we were on break. I looked up the definition of culture, and I'm just going to give the verb definition. It says to maintain in conditions suitable for growth. I thought that was really powerful because I think that should be the goal of what we do when we bring ourselves together with our people or our culture. Is the whole point of culture is for us to grow together. Like growing, the whole premise of this is a incubator for growth and evolution, right? Mm-hmm. It's not one set thing, because what happened in the past is that we tried to have, this is our culture, and we got lost in the sauce. Like, as people of color, we started feeling like we needed to integrate into the European way, right? And so self got lost in that. So I just wanted to bring that there, that the whole intention of culture is to develop, to create an incubator so that we can grow and be our highest, best self. Yes.
And if I could jump in real quickly, because I'm just thinking about something that is kind of cultural in a sense. You know, we think about what we eat. You know, we think about certain foods that we've been eating over a period of time, like the chitlins and all that other kind of stuff. And we did that because we had to, you know, and then we accepted that as a culture. So we talk about soul food as an aspect of our culture, and the soul food is killing folks.
Yeah. The reactionary culture. That's what we talk about. You have a reactionary culture. Mm-hmm. It's a reactionary culture. Well, Dr. Amos Wilson defined it as a reactionary culture based on how you were being treated. Now, through over time, now you have incorporated that as a part of your traditions, and it's not really working in your best interest because of that.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, like a child that is coming from abuse. So what it takes to decide that everything that I've learned is wrong. Can you imagine what it means to decide that what my caretaker, my first gods, my mother and my father, grandmother, grandfather, and preachers have said is no longer working for me? That it takes a lot for people to get to that place where they decide, I need to do something different. I want to do something different. And you're kind of going against the norm. And I'm not speaking for all, because not just African Americans have resistance to mental health therapy or getting services, but I'll speak to the culture that I belong to, and that where my heart is my culture. So to take a position on that, and to take a position on having to say that anything that my parents did was incorrect or wrong or caused me some type of devastation or mental health problems is a lot to surrender to. So by the time that people get to us, like a lot of times recently, we see a lot of African-American young people between the ages of 19 and 23, because they go away to the university and there's a little bit more freedom there, a little bit more autonomy there, and they have services on campus that would allow a child or a young person to go and seek help. And so they can start to change paradigms and change belief systems in school, in college, and they'll see their counselors or they'll see mental health specialists that are on campus, and a lot of times they can start there. It's a really great place to start because they're already going away to a university that gives them the space to become autonomous from their family system, right, to begin to self-differentiate from their family system in the first place. But if they don't do that, or a lot of times friends of mine and myself has said when we've gone away and come back, we then find ourselves going right back into the position or the roles that we played within our family system, and all the work that we've done kind of goes away unless you have the willingness or the courage to stand up and say, hey, I don't do chitlins because, and this is why, and, you know, I'm not better than, because you got to deal with that. You got to deal with who do you think you are. You have to deal with how dare you. You went away to that fancy school. Now you're coming back. And, you know, so there's a lot of those pushbacks that stop people from getting help. And now who will I be with if I decide to change my behaviors and I go against my family system and get the help that I need? There's a lot of fear of isolation that takes place. So when people come to me for services, I understand that right from the beginning. I know that to get to this office here and sit in that space there has been a moment of courage and probably a lot of great loss. A lot of things have happened before a person decides, I want to come and sit in your chair and talk with you, or sit on this sofa and talk with you. There has been a lot of contemplation that has taken place, and some people don't even know the measure of consequences or fallout that will happen because they're making the choice to get healthy.
Yeah, you mentioned the word courage, and it takes a lot of courage to step forward.
A lot of courage.
You know, I mean, I was just thinking about Kanye West a few moments ago. Here is a brother that, you know, has a whole lot going for him. You know, he's, I want to say, daggone near a billionaire. If not there, he's close. You know, but you look at all that he's been able to accomplish in life, but he has that stigma of, you know, things not being completely right with him mentally. And there are countless examples of others who have exhibited. Well, you know, think about the last president of the United States. How many people thought that there was something wrong with him mentally? He's crazy. You know, he can't speak full sentences sometimes. You know, it's like baby talk. But here this person is the president of the United States, you know. But back to the idea of the courage that's involved. It takes a great deal of courage to just say, hey, something is wrong with me mentally, and then deal with the stigma that goes along with that. So that's why I asked the question, because, you know, you can talk to people until you're blue in the face about the need for them to do something about something that's going on in their lives. But until they decide that they want to take that step forward, you're wasting your breath.
Yeah, some people say rock bottom. You know, people have to have a rock bottom experience. I don't know Kanye West's story, but what I do know is that he lost a mom, and him and his mom were their only family. And if he didn't go and, you know, lost his mom right in the midst of all of his, you know, new fame and becoming a young man. There were so many things going on in that time of his life. If he didn't address those challenges, then you start to push him down, and there's a lot of reactivity, I can imagine. He doesn't surprise me just from a little bit of stories that I know about him. His behaviors and things don't surprise me if he's had these experiences and they've gone unchecked or not in a space where he can, you know, address them. But just because we have money doesn't mean that we're always seeking services to deal with our traumas, our hurts.
Yes. Well, we definitely want to encourage those who are listening. If you're having ideas or issues, or you think that you might benefit from some type of counseling, you know, be courageous. Go ahead and reach out to someone like Stephanie. You know, I have been through a little therapy myself, and, you know, I found it quite to be very, very beneficial in terms of raising my level of understanding, being able to work through some things. You know, there's nothing wrong with seeing a professional. When your knee hurts, you go to the doctor. You know, when you other things happen, you seek out professional advice.
Religion.
Yeah.
And the brain is
spirituality.
Yeah.
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 It's an organ.
Yeah. And we just have just a few moments, but as we were having this conversation, I was just thinking, and this is no disrespect to my Christian brothers and sisters, but sometimes you got to do more than take it to the Lord in prayer. Sometimes,
right.
You think, well, I'll just talk to Jesus, and everything's going to be all right. Well, you can do that. But sometimes you got to talk to somebody who's going to talk back to you in a voice that you can hear clearly without confusion. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, yeah, and that it's literally just a guide. A clinician worker is not giving a lot of, or him giving a lot of advice. It's just helping to guide the thought process. So if I have a reactive thought process, now how do I help you to nurture the way we do things? Like, how about we find out this didn't work? Is there another way? I'm telling you, the language that I hear all the time is, I didn't even think about that. That thought never even crossed my mind. That's the beauty of having a mental health facilitator, someone that's not telling you what you should do and how it should be done, but is just saying, well, have you thought about this? And let's process this. What do you want to see? How do you want to see your outcome? And then helping you to guide you to getting a healthy emotional outcome. You want to raise your emotional intelligence quotient. That helps you become a better self, a higher self. And we got a lot of work to do in that area in our culture to help us to heal our hurts and heal our pain.
All right.
It's real. We can't ignore it. Okay.
So we're going to give her phone number out one more time, 216-455-5571, 216-455-5571, Lamplight Counseling Services. Stephanie Stevens McCain, thank you for joining us on 360 Info Network. And we will look forward to the next conversation, because this is not a one and done. Trust and believe.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Okay. Brother Hamptonio, we got a minute. Anything you want to get out there before we conclude?
Well, just in this, per our conversation, we can't negate the importance of culture, and we have to understand that just like, white and black, those are two different degrees of things, and the way we see things, the way our worldview and things of that nature is different.
Okay.
So you have to take all that into account.
All right. Before we go, I just want to put it out there. My brother Stephen E. Boyd says, make it very clear the difference between elders and old people. There is a qualitative difference. Elders do not need to be taught anything. They're wise enough to know. They still learn daily. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our engineer, Tone, for pulling everything together. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Don't forget, next Saturday at Larchmere Arts, 7 p.m., 12726 Larchmere Boulevard. Vince Robinson and the Jazz Poets with our special guest, Vision. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.